Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I'm so glad to be here. And my promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business and your social media marketing and help you stay social. After all, don't you want to be the business everyone's talking about? I know I do. And I am so stoked to have a very special guest with me today, Lynda Katz Wilner. Welcome, Lynda.
Thank you, Lorraine. It's great to be here.
And Lynda, I would love you to tell my audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
What I do. Let me start with my training, because my training is that I'm a speech and language pathologist. And early in my career, I worked in hospitals with people with communication disorders. Now, Lorraine, it's that passion that I had to help people communicate that's carried me through my entire career. And I evolved into working with people who do not necessarily have clinical disorders, but they're concerned with their communication. So now I'm a communication and speech executive coach and trainer, helping people with their public speaking skills or their executive presence, or even if they have a foreign accent or a heavy regional dialect. All of those areas, I help people speak, sound, and look like leaders.
And that's fascinating. I have one question for you about this is what would you say is the biggest problem you serve when people come to you looking for help in their speech or in the way they talk to others?
I think the biggest problem is either a lack of confidence or somebody who's judging themselves too harshly. They come to me because they might be moving up in their career and they don't have the confidence. They don't feel they sound authoritative or they sound very young. And Lorraine, the way I look at it is they may not be matching the visual, how they look, with the vocal, how they sound, and the verbal, what they say. And so I help them look at those 3 V's and see where we have to realign them so that they come across consistently and confidently. And when they do that, they do become much more confident.
Right. And for those who don't know what the 3 V's are, what are they?
The 3 V's are the visual, the vocal, and the verbal.
And what is, out of those 3 V's, what is the one that probably comes out more in others? It's harder, it's what would you say is harder?
Well, let's think of it this way. You go into a networking event and you judge people. We can't help. We always judge people when we look. Do we want to talk to them? Do we want to run the other way? Or are we neutral? And so the first thing we must be judging them by is how they look. What's their posture like? Do they look confident? Do they look engaging? Do they look closed off? Do they look like they do not want to be there? Or they're looking at the door for somebody better to talk to? So in that sense, in that setting, it's going to be visual. That's the first thing we're going to see. We judge people, right? We look at somebody, we make an impression, and we may not be right. And that's where I come in to help them match it so that it is consistent with the person's image.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought about that now. It's amazing how many times that I walk into the room of people that I don't know, and there's certain people we gravitate towards, Mm-hmm. And you're right. Those are the ones that they have good posture. They are very presentable. They're dressed nice, or that they're not closed, but open. Mm-hmm. So that's really good. Really, really good.
And you see it in even the way when they talk to you, or you see the one who's uncomfortable by how they're standing, but also when people talk to each other. Lorraine, if I saw you in person, look at the feet of somebody. Are they facing directly at you, or are they turned away? Because if they're turned away, maybe they're ready to take a step away from you. Where's their heart? Is their heart facing you, or is it facing other people who are walking into the room? We don't even think about it, but we're reading those signals in people.
Wow. Yeah. And I probably misread those many times, many times. Interestingly, you also, you have a business, and a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, they are either starting a business, or they have a big business, or they are thinking they're in corporate and they want to, have a business, or some of them are really doing really well in business. But what is the one thing that you think is important? Because you could relate to this because you own your own business. What is the one thing that you think is the most important thing in running your own business?
That's a wonderful question. I've had Successfully Speaking, my business, since 1983. And I'm fortunate that I've been able to do that exclusively since 1983. And I think probably the most important part is a willingness to work. Because if you have your own business, it's not 9 to 5, as you know, Lorraine. So it could be the evening, it could be the weekend. I think the challenge is that you have to be willing to work other hours, but then you also have to set your limits and boundaries, because it can kill you. I don't mean necessarily literally, but if you're working all the time, you may begin to resent that. So you have to balance that out. But I think the time factor is probably one of the most important things on how you're using your time wisely to have a successful business, or a business that you want to continue to work in.
Absolutely. And that's a golden nugget. And being able to spend your time wisely is probably the most important thing. And, me and you, because we do a lot of stuff online. I mean, you have an online course that's incredible. And you want to tell my audience a little bit about your online course, because I before I get into the next question, because I think it's really important.
Sure. Well, I've been doing public speaking masterclasses for years, and I work with people just sometimes on public speaking. That's what they want to work on. And I thought, we've learned so much in this pandemic on how many things can be virtual, and I do a lot of virtual training, but a lot of people need to do things at their own pace, maybe in the evening, maybe on the weekends. And I know I'm not going to work forever, but I want to share the knowledge and the skill set that I have. And so I decided to create an online public speaking course, which is called, appropriately, Speak, Sound, and Look Like a Leader. And it's on a Kajabi platform where people can access it. They can also, fortunately, now you can even put these on your phone as an app. So they can access the course whenever they want. If they want to just do some warm-up exercises, they can go open up their phone and say, okay, let's practice the warm-ups, or let me go through some of the exercises on how to control and harness my nervousness. Or I need some tips on remembering how to speak concisely, or balancing the 3 V's. And all of that's there. And Lorraine, even though there are, and it may be daunting to some people that there are 50 micro lessons, some of these videos are 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 3 minutes. But the beauty is you don't have to go through it as a course one after another. You pick and choose the topic you want to work on or what you want to review. And it's for a lifetime. You always have access to the product.
And that's awesome. And the reason I asked that to you is because time is always, we were talking about time a minute ago, and literally time is like the most precious thing we have. And sometimes, there'll be something that is either in person or online that we're busy during that time. And I love the fact that, because, and I don't know if did you create this course out of the pandemic? Was that your idea, or did you create it during or before?
It was actually during, but I don't think it was because of the pandemic. It was because I wanted people to have access to my services at all times. And maybe as business owners, I don't have to be working all those times. So yeah. I can be playing golf and somebody could be buying my program. And so I think we have to think, and a lot of people who are professional speakers, though, during the pandemic had to think of multiple streams of income. Because if you can't go speak someplace, what else do you do? I was fortunate enough that I do a lot of training, and it's always been virtual. So that didn't change for me. But people started thinking, how else can we sell our services? We go out and speak places, and we can do it virtually, but why not have courses where they can access it? And I've published materials over the years. I have about 12 or 13 products of accent modification materials. So I've always self-published and sold things, but I thought a book is one thing, but this online course with videos is to me, a much better way to train people because they feel like they're with me. They're hearing me talk and they're hearing my voice and they're seeing me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's even when you said, we have some warm up exercises and stuff. I remember years ago, for instance, I used to be a singer and I used to sing. Mm-hmm. And so what I did is I used to warm up on my way to church, or if I was going to a wedding or wherever I was going to be singing, I would literally warm up in the car with certain exercises. I remember when I was like 16 years old, putting a cassette tape in, warming up for choir because I had it first thing in the morning. So it's so important that online piece, but the app piece that nowadays you could just put it into CarPlay and you could be practicing some of the things that you struggle with while you're driving to work, or if you're a commuter and you are actually in traffic, especially in my area where I live, those who commute into New York, literally you sometimes are sitting in traffic. So you put on the app on your CarPlay and you can practice. So I think that's really great that you created this online course. And later on, I'll put more information in it about, below the post.
Yeah. And I think, Lorraine, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think when I think about another reason, because you asked me why I did this, it's just with all the years I've had and decades of working with people, a lot of people say you have to write books, And I just felt the best way I can serve people is to continue to serve them with the training that I do. And it was actually they're 50 video lessons, but it was a brain dump. It's what I've known for years of experience that aren't even in my master classes, but everything I know about voice and public speaking, I just threw right in there. And so again, for some people, they may just pick and choose what they want to work on, but it's a wonderful resource of exercises and skills that they can learn.
That's awesome. And I think too, with the way that everything's going online, it's probably the best place to be able to put your stuff, but it also kind of leaves a little legacy too. Mm-hmm. Years from now, we'll see your course and people will still be taking it because it's very relevant. It's one of those evergreen things that's very relevant for any year, any decade. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of cool.
We always have to speak, right?
Yeah, we always do. Sometimes we don't want, or sometimes we shouldn't. But so back to the whole business thing, because I always like to talk about business because I feel like that we struggle too. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to always paint the picture that everything is just peaches and cream and everything is just going great and everything, but we all struggle. What would you say, and this is after pandemic now, is the biggest struggle when it comes to doing your business today, in today's 2022?
The struggle is thinking that you have to do everything yourself because you want to control everything. And that happens to be part of my nature. I know how I want things done. And so I think the struggle is both psychologically to give it to somebody else. Like, I know I train really well, but I may not be the social media expert. I may not need to spend my time putting together charts. So learning to delegate and allocate money to people who do what they do best so I can do what I do best. I think that's probably the biggest lesson or struggle, because many people don't want to part with their money, but then they're spending time doing something where they could be making money doing what they do best and not struggling to figure out how to put up this post or whatever that might be.
I love that. And, I recently read a book. It was by Gay Hendricks. I believe it was called, I can't even think of the name of it, but it basically talked about these 4 zones. And the zones that you want to be in is in the zone of genius. Mm-hmm. And so I think if that is a great piece of advice, is as far as I'm concerned, is that, and it's a struggle too, because delegating is hard. I mean, I remember the first time I delegated my email inbox. That was hard because I felt like it was personal. That was something, but it wasn't. It was just all my business stuff. So it was like, those are hard things to delegate. And especially, your work, if somebody's promoting your work, it's very important that it's promoted the right way. Mm-hmm. So I would love you to tell my audience maybe one more piece of advice. Now I'm going to move back to the speaking. One thing that you can share, which, like say that everybody here, they don't do a lot of speaking. Maybe there's someone on the line that would rather watch the paint dry channel than go in public and speak. What is one piece of advice that you could give them?
First of all, encouragement in knowing that they're not alone and that 72% of the people in the United States have some form of public speaking anxiety. So they're not alone. And the other part, and again, you said one, but I feel like I need to give a few of these, and that is that people worry that they're nervous. And it's not, you have to reframe that nervousness. It's that you're excited and your adrenaline is pumping. And if you're not nervous, it may mean that you don't care enough. And so the day you get up to do a speech at work or wherever it might be, and you're not nervous at all, I've been told early in my career, that's the day you worry, because it means you're not taking it seriously enough. So whenever you feel those jitters, understand that that is part of the process. And instead of going away from it, just say, I'm ready now and I can move on and do this.
Yeah, I recently had the opportunity a couple Saturdays ago or 2 Saturdays ago, I spoke in front of about 209 people on Zoom. Never spoke to that many people on Zoom before, though, maybe a little bit short of that. But I was like, when I went into it before the day, I was like, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. I know the material, blah, blah, blah. But like maybe 5 minutes before it happened, I just wanted to crawl in a hole somewhere and like, why did I say yes to this? I remember like having that mental self-talk. But once you get into it, it's the same thing when you walk in the room that you don't know anybody. You basically, once you get into it and you start talking to someone and you're giving and you're opening yourself up, that's, to me, is the most important thing that you need to do. I think I read something that you wrote or maybe heard something that you said that I thought was so true. You had mentioned that when you're speaking, to go around, before the speaking event happens, go around the room and get to know people. And I always kind of practice that because I'm very relational. And I feel that is a really important key to even making you more comfortable with the room that you're speaking to. Now, of course, you can't do that on Zoom.
You can to a degree, Lorraine. And it's so funny because if you heard, I was almost going to interrupt you. And that's exactly what I was going to say before you even asked me.
Oh, wow.
A great strategy is walk around the room so that when you start, you have some allies in the audience and they're friends of yours. They may not be real friends, but you've had a conversation. So start by looking at them. And the ones who are not paying attention, don't focus on them. You don't know why they're not paying attention. It's not that you're bad. It may be something else is going on. So focus on the people you've met. If you have the opportunity in virtual, and you said you spoke to 209 people, that is daunting because you're not always, sometimes you don't see the people that don't have the gallery. You're not in a Zoom meeting. And people are saying, how can I talk to a camera and feel like I'm engaging? Well, several things it is difficult because you do have to look into the camera. But if you can ahead of time and chat, make some comments or try to connect with people. If it's an informal meeting and it's gallery, start talking to people or tell me where you're from. I'd love to hear about this. Please put this in the chat. And make sure if you do something virtually, make it as engaging as possible by asking people to post in the chat. And then you don't feel like you're alone just talking to a camera.
Yeah. And I actually, I practiced this with other like little speaking engagements. And I was trying to figure, 209 people, how am I going to know where they're at? They're probably in all different areas. And I was actually speaking on LinkedIn and I literally said, hey, I want you to either answer 1, 2, or 3. 1, that you do not have a profile at all. 2, that you do have a profile, but you're not active, or that you're active. 1, that you have a profile and you're not active. 2, that you do have a profile and you are active. And then 1, you don't have a profile at all. And I was just watching it come in. And and it teaches you actually, if you look at the chat, what's coming in, it showed me who was in my audience. And I knew that I was going to be able to pivot to something else. Like if I got all threes, I was in trouble. Mm-hmm. But I got mostly ones and twos, which was they were familiar with the platform. Some were active and some weren't. Mm-hmm. So I knew that it was going to be great. I mean, another time I realized that I was in the wrong crowd by just listening to who was sitting next to me, mm-hmm. Which is, what do? I think at the end of my talk, I spoke on Facebook, and at the end of my talk, everybody came up to me and asked me how to disconnect their Facebook page. So I literally could do both. If I wanted to, I could be someone who could be anti-social media and start a business. And
right.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I think too, I love the networking events where they do talk and you get to know people through, the chatter before the event actually starts. So keep that in mind, everyone out there, when you are, in a room and you are speaking. Get to know who you're speaking to, or at least know who you're speaking to before you get to that room. I think that's important too.
And be curious, right? You need to know your audience and ask questions. You don't have to just be talking about yourself. And I think the days of presentations are gone. They should be interactive conversations, because you can't just stand there and talk at people. People won't tolerate that anymore. And they just don't have the attention span for that.
I think we should just all become TikToks, and speak like that. And
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah, we're not going to. TikTok is, it is actually really doing well. People are really doing well with it. But, there's plenty of social media platforms out there that are, really good for different businesses and stuff. Speaking of social media, you are online, and what is your favorite platform? I always ask this question.
My favorite platform for my business?
Yes.
My favorite platform for my business is LinkedIn, because that's where the people are who are looking to improve their professional communication skills. Facebook is different, but for LinkedIn, you have HR professionals who may be dealing with situations at work where somebody has a poor performance review or says that their goal is to work on their communication skills. So I need to know those people. And I need to know people who are serious about their work and looking to improve, because I do a lot of corporate training where the organizations pay for the coaching. So that's really the best. And I think it's the most informative. The articles I read on LinkedIn are just much more in alignment with what I'm trying to learn.
Absolutely. It's actually my favorite platform too. So truth be told, I spend, some time on it. So I want to ask you too now, because you are a business owner, to give one piece of advice for those who are in business. One thing that you think is the most important thing that will help them move forward.
That's an interesting question, because I know I talked about the time management and be willing to spend extra time. Mm-hmm. I think one of the best things is to meet people and don't just talk about who you are, but meet people and be very curious to learn about them. And as you learn about other people, they become more interested in you and they'll learn what you do. And I think that's the best way to make the connections. We all know the person on LinkedIn who may try to connect with us and then sell us something right away. We want to build connections. And if we meet somebody and they like us and we like them, we'll think of them when an opportunity comes up. So I think the best thing is you can't stay hidden in your office and not connecting with people, but don't be aggressive to try to sell yourself. I would be aggressive to learn about other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you do that well. And so many people out there do that well. So keep on doing it. I want to just ask you, people have been listening to you now for the last, 15 minutes at least. What is, how can they get in touch with you if they need help, or if they, want to look at your website, or just give us some information? And I will also post it below all my social media posts too. So
sure. My website is successfully-speaking.com. And that's where you can go to learn all about the public speaking classes, the master classes I have, the books that I sell, the blogs that I have, all of my information and to learn the different ways I work with people, either in person or mostly virtually now, because most of my clients are all around the world. And all of the information is there. I do have one other website, LyndaKatzWilner.com. And I'm sure, Lorraine, you'll put the spelling. It's Lynda. And that's more of my website for my speaking engagements and when I host different types of interview shows. So I have both websites, but they link to each other. Successfully-speaking.com is the best way. And then to look for me on LinkedIn under my name, and Successfully Speaking is also, I do have a Facebook page.
Awesome. And you have an Instagram too, and a Twitter. So, just I'll put all those links below so you can follow, and we would love that.
And I'll add a YouTube channel. I do have a YouTube channel with many, many videos, over 200 videos. So that's another one too that we can add to that.
Yep, we'll put all those on. And thank you. Thank you so much for being my guest. It's always a pleasure, and I always learn so much when I do these podcasts. And
thank you. Thank you, Lorraine, for having me.
And until next week, everyone, I'll see you soon. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram at Biz Gone Social for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.